morning, everyone. Rainy and muddy, we're still here. So, a big thank you to Benny, who has a monumental task today of cleaning up all the mud after we cracked it. We're going to be really happy to have that parking lot. I know we all are. Just a word about next week before we start with today's program. We are continuing the pattern of having the Dean's Forum here in the Fireplace Lounge. And then the adult forum will continue to be in the Fontaine. So next week in the Fontaine, we will have Louis Jenkins, poet and playwright, with us. We're reading poetry and then talking about his play that debuted at the Gutsy this year. So Louis Jenkins next week, and this week we're back to Bishop Bruce Caldwell with what he has for us.
He has no idea. So I'll move this forward so people can walk behind me. Don't worry about it when they do, okay? All is well. Dwayne, thank you for your words this morning. The Word of God was preached and shared today in wonderful ways, so appreciate it. And we'll look forward to it, those of you who are going to the 10:30. At the last forum, what I did is talked about the survey coming, right? Yeah. Recall it. Well, 345 people later, we've got a pretty good survey, and it's come back, and I'm not going to share anything about it other than to say this, that we clearly want transparency around it, right? We want you to know. But we also want to summarize it, and we want to interpret it in community. So we're gathering the leadership and so forth to interpret and to try to understand and to see where we go with it, what actions we might learn, what further, it's an opening of a conversation. So it opens the door for lots of possibilities of learning for this community. I can say I think it's an excellent survey, and so we'll be back to you on that. You'll get a summary of it. It'll also be available, I'm sure, somewhere around the place if you want to dig further into the 30-some pages of it. Okay? So that's what we did last time. This time, because we are entering into the stewardship season, I want to talk to you about stewardship. And I want to talk to you about it in a way that isn't quite normal. I hope. We have Consecration Sunday, November 17th, which is coming up. And we have speakers over the next little while and so forth. But I want to set a larger context for stewardship for you, if I can this morning. And I want to do it through a book. The book that I have used recently, it's a fairly new book, Holy Currencies. I preached a little on money as a currency a couple months ago, right? Eric Law is my mentor on that. Eric Law, if you haven't experienced Eric Law, I think he was here once at the cathedral in the past, right? Eric is an amazing person. He's developed a whole website and an organization called Kaleidoscope, and he does a lot of work on developing healthy leadership in the church. Good communications over differences. He spent his whole ministries in reconciliation. But more than that, in teaching an ascetical practice of reconciliation. It's not good enough to say, hey, I want to like everybody. You got to learn how to, right? And he's got practices that actually work in community to help people develop a reconciled and loving community. He's also engaged in stewardship most recently. He's interested in sustainability in the church as we enter into this next phase of life in the church. Some call the missional church phase, and some of you have been reading, how many in book groups? Fair number. You've been reading about that. What is a missional church? a guy by the name of Reggie McNeil, who's sort of in the emergent church movement, has three things he says about the missional renaissance, he calls it. He says there are three shifts that need to go on during this missional renaissance. The first is from internal to external focus in the church. From internal to external focus in the church. The second is from program development to people development. From program development to people development in the church. And the third is from church-based to kingdom-based leadership. That's a little more difficult to understand, but I understand it to be so that, let's say, the next dean here is more expansive in their understanding, not just an institutional person, but a God person. Not just an institutional person, but a God person, wanting God's work to happen in all aspects of life. That's a big missional task, right? So, this particular book by Eric Law is called Holy Currencies, 6 Blessings for Sustainable Missional Ministries. So if we're going to sustain a church that is doing some of those external things, more expansive in its understanding of mission, and developing human beings all the time for ministry, we need to have something that sustains that. We need to have many things. As you know, the history of the church around stewardship has been, we talk about 3 things, right? What are they? Come on, give it to me. Time, talent, treasure. The 3 T's, right? Of stewardship. Time, talent, and treasure. We've talked about that forever, it seems. And I think that's too narrow, myself. And Eric Law makes a very good point in this book that it's way too narrow. And, you know, generally, the third little pig is the one we're really talking about in the story. Which one's that? Amen? Amen, brothers and sisters. That's what it oftentimes gets down to. I want to suggest to you that that is very important, but it's just 1/6 of the importance of a healthy, sustainable system for the church. There are 5 other areas that we really need to focus on if we're going to have a sustainable life together and a good life together. So money is just one part of it, an important part, but so are all the others. What I've done is I've drawn, hardly could you call it a drawing, okay. But I scratched up some stuff for you here, currencies that Eric Law sees. He sees 6 currencies that need to be built in. A currency is anything that flows, right? You can exchange and helps you accomplish things, right? Okay. So he sees gracious leadership as a major currency. They're all equal to him. Relationship, truth, wellness, money, time, and place are the 6 currencies he sees that are very important in the church. My task this morning is to describe each one to you and maybe suggest some possibilities of how you develop those currencies in a church. Yes?
You don't know how marvelous that is. That is a motorcycle. That is a tire. It just keeps rolling forward.
Very, I like it. I like it. Okay, so it's for sale. This little piece of art could be for it. But you're right, it has movement. The intention is that he calls this a cycle of blessings. And the idea is you start in one place and it leads you to all the others. It sort of moves around in a system. None of that is static. You can't have one without being connected with some of the others in it. That's what's fun about it. Once you decide, oh, which one am I going to focus on and try to develop here at St. Mark's, well, it'll lead you to the others eventually. Okay? But it's good to have a starting place. And we could probably say, I think we could say, that we have a lot of currency in some areas here, not so much in some of the other areas. Okay? And I think when we get our survey summary back and so forth, it'll probably say some of that to us. Okay? The weak areas that we need to focus on and concentrate on so that we become more robust, sustainable, and a stronger community together. So, and during the course of my talk, as I try to explain these to you, I want you to think about which one you think you would focus on. You would focus on if you were in charge of the world here at St. Mark's. Okay? Because at the end of our session, I'm going to give 5 minutes, after questions, I'm going to give about 5 minutes for everyone in the room to come up and take one of these markers and just check the one that you think needs work. Okay? You just check the one that needs work, and we'll get a pattern. It'll be an interesting sort of feedback from you so that we can focus our action here. Okay. So let me begin with the third little pig and get it out of the way. Okay? Money. Money, I mentioned to you the other day, it's just in the sermon, just $1. It's, dang, it ain't worth much, except the value we give it. It's just paper. Right? Now, you'd be irritated with me if I burned it in front of you, probably, because we know it has some value to us. But it's just paper. It's a measure of value. $1 will get me something at the dollar store, maybe. Right? I know that. It might get me something at the dollar store. My granddaughter knows what it'll probably get in the way of various forms of candy. Things like that. It also is a means of payment. It's a way we use to pay one another. It's easier than bartering. Bartering still happens a lot in the art world and in lots of worlds where you're trying to make it. You learn bartering still, right? But our normal way of paying now isn't even with this. It's through digital payment, right? Most of our stuff comes out of my account and things get paid. It's really quite remarkable how that happens. Magic. So, my thing is that I would like to exchange some of this stuff from my pocket to God's mission. That's one of my tasks in life. I want to take care of my family. I have a need to do that, and I think it's a vocation to care for family and others. But I do want to get some of this into God's hands and action in this world. So that's part of what I tried to do. I went out to Benson. Anybody been to Benson? I went out there Friday. Drove over to Benson. There's a ranch called Heartland Ranch there. They are doing remarkable things. They're taking young women who have been abused, very challenged young women, some who have been in the sex traffic thing. Did you know Minnesota is like way up there as far as states in this? I had no idea. But anyhow, it's a huge problem. They have a ranch over there where they pair up horses and young women, and they're doing remarkable work. That's what I'm talking about. I want to get some money exchange, some currency into that system. Places like that, places I think like St. Mark's where good things are happening. I need to do some exchange. Now, The traditional model of developing money in the church is to ask people for it. Yes? And that's a good model. It does work. We do, once a year at least. We ask people to consider their giving to the church. We'd like you to make that part of your life, a pattern of life. And there are all kinds of models. You can go to the scripture if you want models of giving. There are good models in scripture and some not so good models. There's models that are about sort of guilt giving and so forth. And then there's free, gracious giving in scripture as well. It's all in there. You can find the model you choose, okay, for giving. My suggestion is that, and I think Eric Law would say, just asking for contributions is not enough when it comes to the exchange of money in the church, because there are a lot of other assets that are here, and lots of other ways to get that stuff flowing here, right? There are collaborations and partnerships with others around us that could increase the flow of currency and create a better world. Don't have to do it ourselves, always, right, in the church. There are lots of ways to connect with others. That gets us into relationship questions. In India, what's the name of the guy who started the microloan banking thing? Do you know his name? He got the Nobel Peace Prize? Yes.
Mohammed Yunus.
Yes, he got the Nobel Peace Prize, right?
Right.
And now there are millions and millions of dollars in microbanks all over the world. Money is just flowing in amazing ways. And I've been part of some of that in Honduras and places, making small loans. It's amazing, the return rate on those loans compared to our normal banking system. Yes, Matt? On that? 97% or something. Well, that's amazing. And that's also a place you can invest money. There are a lot of places that will take your money. They'll guarantee you maybe a 3% or whatever it is. And you can park your money there and help a lot of people. So there's lots of ways to develop currency. I would suggest that we've got a huge asset in the building here, and there could be a lot of revenue flow from this space. There are spaces that are not being utilized here well. There are possible businesses and things that could have all kinds of different ways to get the flow of currency developed here. Not just our annual stewardship drive. We need to think bigger about money in the church to be sustainable for the future, okay? So, that's money. The second thing I'd like to talk about is time and place. All the hours utilized on God's behalf at St. Mark's, that's the time. All the hours utilized. I was reading a guy by the name of Clay Shirky, who's written a book. He said, and this is his estimate, Americans watch roughly 200 billion hours of TV a year. Americans watch approximately 200 billion hours of TV a year. That's a lot of time. Think if a fraction of that were utilized for something other than just entertainment. Even if it's education, even if it's just if you're looking at TV as an educational experience, you watch the Discovery Channel or something, right? Even that, if a part of that were put into God's work, it would be an amazing, amazing thing. Developing it is largely about the reallocation of time. I mean, if you want to develop time for God's purpose, there's only so much of it. It's all about how we use it. Okay, so we have to figure out ways to reallocate it in our life. Does that make sense to you? Maybe it is sacrificing television or giving up something or moving time around. It's managing it for God. So our development of time here is to invite people to reallocate it and put it to work. Sunday night suppers, Monday night suppers, so forth. I mentioned Rich Mayer, who's been out in his parking lot every day this week. I think that's excessive. You don't have to do that. You don't get But, you get the point. So developing time is all about reallocation. As far as developing our space, space is, of course, everything we have or could have that could be utilized for God's mission, right? We have an extraordinary building. We've got not only this building, we've got a house next to that house over there, way underutilized, hardly used at all. We've got rooms all over this place. It's wonderful. And it has the possibility of being extremely functional and doing a lot of different things. It's a great space. I would suggest to you there's more space around us. We did a house blessing at the apartments across the way here the other day. They've got a lot of space. The women's club, really elegant space. Nice space. They're Dunn Brothers. That's pretty good space. There's space all around us that could be developed and utilized for mission. We need not just think about this space, but how do we collaborate and develop space for God's work. So, and I also think we need to become much more multi-purpose people in rooms that are just narrowly defined in our world. Don't make much sense in our world anymore. So a room that is just utilized for an hour a week would make a lot of sense for the future church. So I would challenge you to think about development from the standpoint of multi-purpose use of space. So those are, that's time and place. Let's look at gracious leadership. Gracious leaders helps people who help others apprehend the unconditional love of God. They also call for transformation and help folk negotiate difference. I would say those are the three basic things that a gracious leader does. They help people grab hold of the unconditional love of God. They call for transformation in people's lives. None of us are enough, as we are. And they help folk negotiate difference. There's all this edgy stuff in our world. Difference rubs up against in sometimes hard ways. Every church, this church, interestingly enough, is a church that is extremely tolerant and progressive. Yes? Am I correct? You know what you get when you're tolerant and progressive? A lot of difference in your space. You do. It doesn't all look the same. And so it's an edgier place. More potential for conflict and all those things, right? So gracious leadership is helping people negotiate all of that in community. Sometimes St. Mark's is sort of a beehive on a real hot day. You know, is how I would describe it. So leadership needs to help, and we need to develop leaders like that. The only way I know to develop leaders like that is to train them. There are all kinds of good programs around the church today. Eric Laws is one that trains gracious leadership, teaches people how to do it. You don't get it naturally. It's a training thing. So we need to teach more of our leaders some of the actions necessary to provide gracious leadership here. See what I'm saying? So that's the way you develop that. Wellness. Wellness is, I'm talking about physical, social, spiritual wellness here. You know, your own wellness requires what? Maintenance, yeah. What else? What do you require to be well? Food, nutrition, good nutrition. What else? Shelter. Exercise.
Inner peace.
Inner peace. Yeah, stress we found really keeps us alive, but also can kill us. Yeah. So all those things. Certainly what we put into our bodies, the exercise. I would suggest another one, and that is a balanced life of rest. So, you know, the body will probably not get well when it's sick if it doesn't rest. We naturally do that. And so, to develop wellness in a church means probably rediscovering the Sabbath. It's hard to teach in Minnesota. Am I right? This is a busy culture. These folks are always busy doing good things, but they are not balanced. And you really have, if you get into the Bible at all and read it, you are going to bump up against the Sabbath over and over and over again. Why? Because it leads to health. It leads to wellness for God's people. God wants us to be well. And so we have to somehow come to terms with rest and balanced life. So to develop wellness, we have to develop a restful spirit in the church today. We have to rediscover Sabbath, I believe. That's one of the development techniques to do that. We also probably need to learn to covenant together, define our behavioral, the way we're going to live our life together. The vestry has done that. They have a covenant of behavior. And so our behavior is defined, how we're going to treat one another. So, and then you've got to provide space for healing as well. The next one that I would like to cover is truth. And truth, I discovered some very interesting things about this as I was reading. One, do you know the Hebrew word for truth? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'd have to ask my granddaughter. She's in Hebrew school right now on Tuesdays and Saturdays learning. She says, Grandpa, you go like that. Whatever. So the word truth has 3 letters. The first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and guess what? The last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. What are they trying to teach us about truth? The Hebrew people. Through that just symbol. It's all encompassing. You're never going to have it all. You're always going to have a slice of it and you don't know it till it's over. So it is over time. Anybody who thinks they've got the truth, good luck, is what the Hebrew people are saying to you. You can't know the truth. Only God knows the truth, is what they would say to you. The Chinese people have taken a couple of characters. One is 10, the number 10, and the other is like a table or something. And what that means is that you need, before you can discover the truth, you need to have about 10 perspectives. 10 different points of view before you can ever have the truth in the Chinese culture, right? That's not bad. I like those understandings of truth because it keeps us out of judgment with truth. Just when we think we've got it, we'll use it against somebody. right? But this is a way to be soft and easy with truth and to call us into deeper community, relationship, right? Around truth. So to get truth, how would we do that here in this culture? I'll tell you, you have to develop safe conversational moments. And you've got to ask people about their lives. And you got to try to understand what their truth is. If you're seeking truth, go ask 10 people what their truth is in that. Go ask 10 people instead of just assuming you know it. So the best way to develop truth is through deep conversation, honest conversation and safe conversation. We have to learn how to do that here and in other churches. Relationship is the final currency that we're trying to develop. Relationship is the ability to see each other as brothers and sisters. Relationship is the ability to see each other as brothers and sisters. There's that story of, somebody asked the wise person, when do you know it's daybreak, right? Is it when you can tell that the cow out in the field is a cow instead of a horse, or is daybreak when you can tell that it's a spruce tree instead of a pine? When is daybreak? And the guy says, well, it's when you see someone walking towards you and you recognize they're your brother or your sister. That's the point of relationship. When you can actually see people as family, like you would treat a brother and sister, hopefully that you have a decent relationship with. So development is not just growing a network of people, which is very popular today, networking and having degrees of networks and so forth. But it's really about growing a family, a deeper connection than just a connection that gets you jobs or things like that. In order to do that, we have to become more of a Mary church than a Martha church. You know what I mean by that? More of a Mary church than a Martha church to develop relationship. Mary took the time to build relationship with Jesus, yes? Martha was too busy at that moment to catch that relational moment. We have to become much more Mary-like in our relating in a church to develop relationship. I'd suggest to you that there are relationships not only in the church, but all over this place. All around us. People here come from all different regions. I bet we cover the whole Twin Cities. If you think of where all of our people, if we mapped them all, they would cover every neighborhood just about in the Twin Cities. Some of you drive by 3 Episcopal churches to get here, right? Don't you? On a Sunday. So relationships all over the place that we could build. I would challenge you, another way to develop is to actually go out and meet people. Meet 3 new people a day that you don't know. If you follow the same patterns of relationship, you'll never get to build them. You can build more in depth with the ones you have. But how many of you meet new people every day? Anybody here meet new people every day? There are new people all around you every day. That's the point, right? To develop relationship requires stepping out and asking somebody something. It doesn't take much in this world today. You can say, how are you? And if you're willing to listen, you got a relationship. It's just that simple. But there's a lot that we can do with that. So, those are the 6 currencies that Eric thinks the church needs, and that we need to build up those currencies so that they're flowing all around us in the church. So, we've got a few minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions about those? or thoughts, responses? You're ushering. Good.
He'll be here.
Don't forget to take up the offertory.
Bishop, just a
Yes.
comment. You made me think of a concept or an illustration that a learned man gave me one time about relationship. And he likened it to the cross. He said the vertical relationship with the cross is very important in our lives. But equally important, or more important, is the horizontal relationship with the
Right.
cross as we reach out to one another.
Yes, yeah, that's a stretching out of Christ's arms. That prayer is a very poignant and beautiful prayer, reaching out his arms of love on the cross. That makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. What others? Any comments or thoughts? Yes.
That one about place,
Mhm.
and thinking additional use for
Yeah.
this place. And it's a two-edged thing, because there's something about a holy place that you want to draw people to that.
Right.
And at the same time, you have to wipe away that notion of other to let other things happen here. And how do you
Yeah, and that's a
balance that?
That's a balance, and it also leads to conflict within St. Mark's. How do we utilize our space? That's a conflict area here. And I would suggest, for example, you want space like our cathedral space, our sanctuary space, you want that to be a space of transcendence and